Welcome to Vendetta Sports Media. This is Eight Sided Freaks. Today we've got a little bit of a mixed bag for this episode, and I think that's a good thing. We're going to start it off with UFC Paris, previewing that card. A lot of really good fights on that card. We are going to do the main event and co-main event, full previews for those. Those are two pretty big fights, two ranked fights. The co-main may even have bigger implications as far as titles go in comparison to the main event. But either way, two important fights. And then we're going to hit on some news. Some of it is from last week that we didn't have a chance to hit on. That is Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler, Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic. We'll talk about Conor McGregor, obviously. Not a ton, but it is kind of noteworthy when the guy who was supposed to fight for 2 years at this point is booked to fight someone else. And then to end it off, we'll talk about Petr Yan versus Deiveson Figueiredo. That fight just got announced right before we started recording, so good timing for us on that one. But that is the slate today, so we've got a little bit of a mixed bag between some previews and some news, and not just random news that we were able to scrape together, but all very important news as far as fight bookings go. So, Jerry, Anthony, how you guys doing? Are you excited for this UFC Paris card? Jerry, we can swing it over to you first.
Oh yeah, it's good to be back. I missed last week, and I missed what was always one of our favorite episodes, the recap of a pay-per-view. So happy to be back here talking about UFC Paris. And as we were saying before the show, should be a fun card. A lot of entertaining fighters, a lot of entertaining fights. I'm excited for it. The Paris crowd always shows up in loud voice and big numbers.
I agree. I'm excited. I know I was looking at the rest of the schedule, some of the fight nights, and the cards are actually looking pretty decent. So I'm excited. I think people try to get that last fight in before the end of the year all the time. So hopefully it's better things ahead for UFC fans.
Yep. My only complaint is the only time they decide to ever do an early card that starts at noon, they wait until college football season. Don't know why that is a thing. I'll still obviously be watching, but we've got this whole time frame from no football to UFC or to when football starts. Seems like there's never early fight cards on, but the second football starts, we got to have early fight cards. Don't know why that's a decision being made, but it's not the first time I've had that question. So, UFC Paris, pretty good card. Main event, Renato Moicano versus Benoit Saint-Denis. Moicano riding a 3-fight win streak. Saint-Denis coming off his first loss in the lightweight division against Dustin Poirier. And this is a pretty big fight for both of these guys because there's so many talented guys in that lightweight division. When you are ranked, let's see where these guys are ranked. Saint-Denis is 12th, I believe.
Yeah.
Saint-Denis 12th, and Moicano's 11th. But when you're ranked in that portion of the rankings, a win gets you a top 10 fight. A loss gets you someone who's just breaking into the rankings, maybe someone who's not ranked. So it's going to end up being a pretty important fight for both of these guys. Jerry, we can swing it over to you first. What do you make of this main event, and what are you looking forward to?
I think this is a really fun main event for the future of this division. Because I mean, you look at top the lightweight division. Obviously, Islam's going to be around for a little bit longer. Arman Sarukian's on the younger side, but then it's Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, Dan Hooker, Michael Chandler. You can even throw in Gamrot, Fiziev, Dariush. It feels like these guys have been around forever. This is the new era of the lightweight division coming in, and Moicano and Saint Denis, a win here can throw them right back into the mix of moving up to fight another top contender. And I think this is the stepping stone. I'll start with Benoit Saint Denis that he needed. He went from fighting Matt Frivola to his next fight fighting Dustin Poirier. That's a huge step up in competition, a huge step up in skill of your opponent. And I think he needed that middle ground. And I think that's what this Moicano fight is kind of going to be. It's going to be that stepping stone for the winner of it. Both goes both ways, but I'm very excited for this fight. I'm not expecting it to go the distance.
Yeah, I think this is a good matchup. Of not only like it's a pretty solid ranked fight, which is always nice too, but I think both of these people have their own draw. Saint-Denis got a lot of hype, unexpected, to where it seemed like even some like non-diehards, just some casual UFC fans, kind of were really drawn to him ahead of that whole Poirier fight. And then I know. Moicano has his own little fan base there. I know he started doing the little money Moicano thing. So and that's been working for him. So overall, too, besides just the a fight that I think could be fun in the octagon, I think there's a little bit of outside draws to each fighter too, and they have their own little fan bases. So I think I could see one of these really turning into a popular fighter the further they excel, or I guess the closer they get to a title shot.
Yeah, and I think for Saint Denis, and this applies a little bit to Nassourdine Imavov as well. But usually when we do these Paris Fight Night cards, they're going down with Ciryl Gane as the main event. For the first time, Ciryl Gane is not on the card. He's always been kind of the face of French MMA, and they're kind of giving Benoit Saint Denis that opportunity to headline here in Paris and go out there and make a statement for himself, which I think is interesting as far as his like stardom goes. That's not something that's going to make him explode within the US, but as far as French MMA goes, they have some pretty loyal fans over there, and this gives him an opportunity to kind of take a step forward as where he sits in that French MMA kind of pecking order. So I do think that's an interesting opportunity that we don't necessarily see as often. I do want to ask about Saint Denis. I think it's interesting because Anthony, as you mentioned, he had a lot of hype before the Poirier fight. He went into that fight about a minus 200, minus 225, somewhere in that range. He was a reasonably big favorite. And then he loses that fight. And he had some success, but he ultimately gets knocked out. He said afterwards that he had staph. Where do you guys kind of view Saint Denis now as far as stock up, stock down? I'm sure his stock isn't up after that Poirier performance, but is this like, oh, I'm not sure this guy's any good, or you still think he's great? Where do you guys sit on Saint Denis after that kind of first hiccup in the UFC? Anthony, you can lead us off on this one.
I'm still in, and I'll probably even be more in than I was now that he's not as hyped and stuff. But no, I mean, he did have staff. I thought that was kind of apparent in some of the photos I was seeing leading into fight week. Um, I just think he was an intriguing prospect. I think he was so entertaining too, which helps. Um, but that was a big step up, and it's Dustin Poirier, and Dustin Poirier just fought a phenomenal fight against Islam. So, I mean, at that loss alone, I feel like it would almost be hard to like hold that against him with like the most amount of weight on it. I think it's just fair to assume then this is back to on that same trajectory he was at, and like Jerry said, this is probably the fight he should have got first, not that huge step up into the Dustin Poirier. But he took his shot. I thought he looked fine too. He looked good in the first round and a half. Then obviously he got caught and finished, which Dustin Poirier has done throughout his career. So yeah, I'm back on board. Obviously, the other thing is you would like to see a strong performance here and not just getting dominated and hopefully like out wrestled, which I know Moicano can do. So, and then I think, but yeah, if he, looks good here, his trajectory's back on, and that it'll be always be on his resume, but at least you can say because I don't know how old he is, but however long he keeps fighting, you can always say at least he fought Dustin Poirier near the prime. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he is only going off what you just asked. He's 28 years old, so he still has a lot of time left ahead of him in the UFC. As you mentioned, James, earlier, he only has one loss in this lightweight division. That was to Poirier. All his other 4 fights in this division were finishes, or 5 fights in this division were finishes. He is a killer. He's still a very entertaining fighter, and I expect him to get some sort of finish this weekend because he can grapple. He does have 9 submission victories. He has 4 knockouts. Never won by decision, which is a little concerning, but it also makes for a very fun fight because Moicano is going to not just kind of move around and avoid anything. He's going to go right at him as well. This matchup should be very entertaining, but I think a win for Saint Denis not only bumps him up in French MMA already, even more than he already is. I think it might be fair to say after all the stuff with Cyril gone and not winning his title opportunities, that he might become the face of French MMA relatively soon. I don't know how long Cyril Gane's got left with the state of the heavyweight division as well, but a win here in his third time fighting in Paris. He's been on all 3 cards. Could make him a household name around not just France, but the rest of the world.
Yeah, and I'm in a pretty similar spot as you guys on Saint Denis. I'm not like way out on him after that loss to Poirier. I do think that the staff clearly didn't do him any favors there. And I think there were probably issues as well with, his game plan. He had staff, and his thought process was, well, when you got staff, you don't have any cardio. So I'm going to go out there and try and finish this fight in a round and a half. And he didn't get the finish against a terrible guy. He ended up losing. So the thing that the thing with Saint Denis in that fight is, like you said, Anthony, it's a big step up for him. Like, is he gonna pull out of that fight? Like, could you imagine if he pulled out of that fight with Poirier? It's just like guys usually don't get that opportunity. So I understand why he opted to take the fight there. So I'm not gonna hold that against him too much. Then again, if he goes out against Moicano and shows the same issues, gasses out in a round and a half, and gets knocked out, I'm gonna be like, oh, this is kind of not great anymore. But for the time being, I will not go too hard on Saint Denis. I actually still think he is very, very good as well. All right.
Yeah.
As far as the fight itself goes, the matchup, the betting odds have Saint Denis as an even bigger favorite than he was against Poirier. We got some lines kind of all over the place, but I'd say an average is probably about Benoit Saint Denis minus 280. With Renato Moicano at plus 240. I will say I don't think this one is going the distance. I think this is going to be a little bit of a battle of attrition, and we're going to see how the grappling plays out as well. But I think this is going to be who can damage the other person more, and then that damage will make them tired and make them not quit necessarily, but make them get to a point where they can't properly defend themselves. I don't think either of these guys are quitters, but sometimes you just get beat up bad enough where you kind of have to just turtle up and you can't move, or you kind of have to give up your neck and you get submitted or something like that. So, Jerry, we can swing it over to you first. When you look at this fight, how do you see it playing out?
I mean, first, before I hop into that prediction, I think we haven't given Moicano enough credit so far. He does have 3 really good wins recently. Brad Riddell, he's been inconsistent at times, but doing that at Madison Square Garden, getting that win there, beat a durable guy in Drew Dober over 3 rounds in a decision. Then he finished Jalen Turner in the second round. He has some solid wins, and I think he has a very good chance of winning this fight. I just think with the French crowd behind him, I don't see Saint Denis losing this one after the Poirier fight. I think he'll be in great shape. He'll be looking there to knock some heads off, and I think he gets it done with a knockout.
Yeah, I will say it's funny because I was just going back, and Moicano was finished by Aldo, the Korean zombie, and then Rafael Fiziev, and that was in 3 out of 4 fights. But recently, I mean, his chin's been holding up too, because like you said, Jalen Turner put it on him. He survived that onslaught. Drew Dober, I believe, I'm trying to remember the fight. I know he got laid on top of for like 4-minute stretches of that fight, or like 3-minute stretches of that fight. But I mean, I'm pretty sure Dober hit him a couple times. So his chin's been holding up. His cardio's been holding up because he's been able to look like the stronger fighter late in these fights with his wrestling and stuff. But which also might work out, as you were saying, James, with Saint Denis possibly gassing out again, or maybe it was just a one-time thing. But I'm still probably going to lean Saint Denis. I think he's favored for a reason. I'm going to trust the striking find the right shot eventually, or find multiple shots that begin to stack up and kind of drain Moicano. And it seems like Moicano, I will say, is good at finding the subs. He doesn't completely just wet blanket people. But I'm gonna trust Saint-Denis to do the damage, and Moicano's not gonna get beat up and then get the win at the end. I think that's gonna be too tough for him this fight. That's a bad strategy to try to win every fight by, and I just don't think it's eventually it can't work.
Yeah, and Moicano has some very good skills. Like, he's got great clinch takedowns. He takes it back really, really well. If you just look at his record, there's like every single submission's a rear naked choke. Until you get to like the early part of his career. But like, one of the reasons that he was able to wet blanket Drew Dober is because Drew Dober was deathly afraid of giving his back. I just think there's a different level in the grappling between a Drew Dober and a Benoit Saint-Denis. Like, Benoit Saint-Denis has gone out there and pursued takedowns against Poirier. He went out there, pursued takedowns against Thiago Moises, who's a great grappler as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Thiago Moises tried to attempt takedowns and get on top from in this fight. I know Moicano has great BJJ, great sweeps. He doesn't have any submissions off the back. So maybe Saint-Denis looks at that and thinks that's a place he can be safe. We'll have to see. But my point here is, I think Benoit Saint-Denis has good enough grappling to either stay safe or keep this standing. Either way, whether he's getting taken down and staying safe while getting back up or keeping it standing, I think we're going to have a lot of striking exchanges. And as much as Moicano has done some really great things recently, the one common denominator is that he's 8 big shots. Like, and this goes all the way back to, I mean, his featherweight days, like you said, when he was getting finished by Aldo and Korean Zombie. But at lightweight, he got finished by Fiziev, and he hasn't been finished recently, but he got dropped really bad by Jalen Turner. Drew Dober landed some massive shots. I believe Dober busted up his eye. Dos Anjos made him a punching bag for 5 rounds, to the point where RDA felt bad hitting him. Like, he literally afterwards was like, yeah, I took my foot off the gas. I felt bad. I was beating the shit out of the guy, like, really bad. And I'll give Moicano some benefit of the doubt there. That was on short notice. He came up off the couch. That's when the whole Money Moicano thing started. So I'll give him for some leniency for that. But it doesn't help when the rest of the sample size is also you getting hit in the face a lot. That's not really the outlier. So he's just ate a lot of too many big shots in recent fights for my liking against Saint-Denis, a guy who's going to swing hooks as hard as he possibly can. He's going to throw body kicks as hard as he possibly can. I just have to think those are going to land. Like, he'll go out there and throw 6 body kicks as hard as possible until you block it, and then he'll start throwing hooks to your face. It's not a in-depth game plan, but I think it's enough to work against Moicano. So I do think Saint-Denis will get the knockout here. It'll probably be within the first 3 rounds, but at the same time, if Moicano were to find a way to win, I'd probably say it's within the first 3 rounds as well. I don't think this one is going to go very deep, just the way these two guys fight.
Yeah, and that's something else I wanted to just bring up quickly is you mentioned Moicano had the 5-round decision loss to RDA where he was getting pieced up. Outside of that, these guys don't go to decisions very often, if ever. It's very few decisions. So if it does end up being one of those back and forth fights that goes into a 3rd, 4th round, I'm very curious to see whose stamina and conditioning holds up better, because we haven't seen this from either of these guys really before.
Yep. That's a great point. All right. Anything else on the main event from either of you guys before we take it down to the co-main? All right. Co-main event, another ranked fight. Nassourdine Imavov versus Brendan Allen. This one's in the middleweight division. And the rankings on this one, we've got Nassourdine Imavov in that 4 spot. Brendan Allen sitting at number 8. And these two guys are actually ranked higher than the main event as far as UFC rankings go. Nassourdine Imavov coming off a win over Jared Cannonier. That's what moved him to that number 4 spot. There was a lot of controversy in that fight that it was an early stoppage, which I personally believe it was, but it doesn't, that's not like he was getting whipped before that. That was a very good fight, and Imavov showed a lot of good things before that fight was stopped. Brendan Allen coming off his win over Chris Curtis. That was a 5-rounder, which is good for him to get that 5-rounder under his belt. And that win put him at a pretty good spot. Brendan Allen is sneakily 12-2 in the UFC, which you really just don't see a lot of guys that get 14 fights in their career and only have 2 losses. It's really impressive. And he's sitting on 7 consecutive wins. So, like, some really good numbers for Brendan Allen as far as pure win-loss column stuff goes. He's on a really hot streak. So, both these guys, young guys, climbing the division, and this is a similar spot where kind of the next generation middleweight. You see Jared Cannonier, Marvin Vettori, Jack Hermanson, some of those guys sliding down the rankings, getting hot by guys like Brendan Allen, Nassourdine Imavov. So this is a big fight. I don't know if it's a title eliminator. Kind of depends on how that division shakes out. But point being, it is an important fight. Jerry, I believe it is your turn to lead us off. What do you make of this co-main event matchup between Imavov and Brendan Allen?
I want to start with kind of what you just finished with talking about this fight as a possible title eliminator. If this middleweight division wasn't so backed up, I could very well see it. I think that the winner of this should get one of those top 3, whether it's Whitaker, Adesanya, Sean Strickland, depending on what happens with all those guys in their fights. We know Hamzat's fighting Whitaker, so they say. We'll see if that actually happens or not. Seems like the mystic fight of first it was Habib and and Tony Ferguson. Then it seems like it's been Conor and Chandler, and now it's Bobby Knuckles and Hamzat, even though that's only been canceled once. I think they had to postpone it the first time, though, as well. So I think there's been a couple issues with that one. But as far as the fight itself goes, I can see this going 2 of different ways. Brendan Allen can get the takedowns going. He is so dangerous from the ground. He has 8 finishes in the UFC, or 9 finishes in the UFC. 8 of them are submissions. He is a very good grappler, and if he can get Imavov down, I think that's a huge advantage to him. But on the other side, Imavov, he's so well-rounded at points, has 6 knockouts, 4 submissions. He came in, whether you like it or not, he ended up getting the knockout finish against Jared Cannonier, and that's a tough opponent to face. So he's coming with a world of confidence in it, with the French crowd behind him. I really don't know which way this fight's going to go. This is far more of a toss-up for me than the main event, but I think this is why this is such a good co-main event. Do you know if this is 3 rounds, isn't it? They didn't announce it. This would be one that I would love to see go 5 rounds, see over 5 rounds.
Yeah, I was trying to look up if Imavov's last couple fights and if he's really ever fought, someone that wrestled a little bit or had some submission, at least some submission upside and stuff. But no, I agree. I thought he was losing that fight before he scored the finish in the Cannonier one, and then I'm pretty sure that Deiveson one was that the first time when Deiveson just didn't throw anything and was kind of.
That fight was crazy.
Yeah, I think that was the one where that made me think like Deiveson was washed, like it's past, it's over.
Yeah, but that did it for me. I said I'm never picking this guy to win a fight again, and then he fought Anthony Smith, and I held true to my beliefs. But you're fighting Anthony Smith, you got a shot, no matter how washed you look.
There you go. I think so. I don't know. Overall, I'm just excited. I will say Imavov is one of the younger guys that's been moving up the rankings or been in the rankings for some time now. I actually do find him entertaining. So I'm there for an Imavov fight from now on. I think pretty entertaining. Obviously, he's also getting real closer to the title too. So it's pretty big matchups now. And then Brendan Allen, I've always been a huge fan of him. I want to say I think I might have watched his debut, and I've always kept an eye on him since. And especially when you're saying, he was 12-2 or 14 fights. I feel like Brendan Allen had like the Oliveira a little bit. He fought straight like just like mid-level guys for so long. So he was always the one guy like on the prelims or the early prelims and be like, oh, okay, well there's like a fight I'd watch. And he did it for so long. So I think that also can contribute to why his record's pretty solid because he was fighting just kind of mid guys. But hey, winning's winning at the end of the day. So I'm excited to see that he's finally kind of really getting up there in the rankings and showcasing his strengths, or his skills against stronger opponents too. So overall, this is a fight I'm excited for.
Yeah, and to your point about Brendan Allen's record, one of the things that is crazy about this is he made his debut in 2019. So 14 fights since 2019 is like it's a pretty good consistently fighting. And a lot of these guys, I'm not going to say these guys are top 10 guys or top 15 guys, but Chris Curtis, Paul Craig, Bruno Silva, Andre Muniz, Christoph Jotko, Jacob Malkoon, Kevin Holland, those are like fairly solid wins. Some of these guys aren't. Tom Breese actually not a bad win at the time in 2020. Some other guys like your Kyle Dawkins, Carl Robertson, Sam Alvey, Punahele Soriano, not the best wins, but nobody that went like 0-3 and just got booted out of the UFC. Like he fought like real guys who had every single fight like an established UFC record. So you don't really see stuff like that. Usually guys' first 2-3 fights in the UFC will be against someone who went 1-2 or 0-3 and got cut or 0-2 or whatever. So fairly good level of competition for the record that he's got. And betting odds on this one, we've got Nassourdine Imavov minus 210, Brendan Allen plus 170. That looks like the most common line. So a slight lean towards Imavov. The way that I think this fight is going is I think it's going to be pretty determined by Brendan Allen's ability to get the grappling going. If he can get a lot of grappling exchanges going, I think he has a chance, not only because he's a good grappler, but because I think that's what will test Imavov's cardio the most. I was really impressed with Imavov's cardio against Cannonier. I think that was my number one takeaway. For the first time in his career, he didn't look like a dead man by the third round. Like, you got the finish in round 4, which to me, if you would have told me that before the fight, I would have been like, there's no chance. Like, I'm pretty sure I picked Cannonier to get the knockout in, round 4 or 5 or something like that in the prediction, just because I thought he had such a cardio edge in the fight. So, to see Imavov go out there and be the guy to get the stoppage in the later rounds, I think was impressive. That said, it was purely a striking-based fight. There was no grappling. And I think that may be the thing that gasses him out, not the striking. My other concern with Imavov is you just get to the clinch and push him up against the cage. He may be there for at least 2.5 minutes. Will Brendan Allen do that? Maybe, maybe not. But that is a concern for me every time Imavov fights someone with competent grappling, that is going to happen. So otherwise, I think from distance, Imavov is going to be 100 times faster, more technical. So I think he's going to land big shots in the striking. But my question is more about what happens when Allen starts to shoot takedowns. I think he can defend them. Imavov can defend takedowns as long as he's not getting pushed to the cage. He should be fine. And as long as he's not getting in massive scrambles where that gives Allen something, an opportunity to jump on a back or something like that, I think Imavov will be fine as long as he's defending that first entry to a decent level. So I'm picking Imavov in this one. I think it's a little bit of an in-betweener whether he can land that KO or not, but I think he's going to win based off serious damage from strikes, whether that be decision or KO. I'd probably lean the knockout, but there's obviously a chance he goes out there, wins 2 rounds where he clearly outstrikes him. So leaning towards Imavov here in the co-main event. All right. Anything else on the co-main event before we jump to final thoughts?
Well, yeah, I will say I think as much as I kind of want to go for Allen, I'd agree with Imavov. Like you said, I think the striking is going to be too crisp, and Allen, if a lot of his fights, it's funny because he has so many submissions, but he'll shoot at least a little earlier too. He's shooting one takedown, two takedown attempts. I will say that last fight against Curtis, he went 6 for 13. So that would be something you would want to see in this fight is a more aggressive takedown style to use that wrestling in the submissions. But yeah, I am worried that there's just too much of a difference in the striking realm. And I do think Imavov's pretty competent and can um, could defend some takedowns. I am looking forward to a little bit more chaos or scrambles, and I think Allen might have a better chance to find something. But I just wanted to say with the knockout thing that you were saying, Allen, his two losses are knockouts. Um, those were multiple years ago, but so Chin seemed to be pretty fine recently, but you never know. This could be the time where that'd be funny, even if after like 3 years, a third loss also by knockout would be not concerning, I'd say, but that would be interesting.
And I'll say also one of the guys who got knocked out by was Sean Strickland in 2020. He's not the most powerful guy at that time. He wasn't the most powerful puncher. So I'm assuming Brendan Allen's chin has evolved as his game has, but maybe there's still a weak spot there that maybe Imavov does have the power to finish him. And I still am kind of leaning towards Allen. I just think he will manage to get the takedown and will manage to get a submission, but it won't be easy. And I think we'll see a third round finish one way or another.
Yeah, and I do think this will be as far as fight night co-main events go, this is about as good as you're going to get. Two guys who could be fighting for a title relatively soon. So I think it speaks to the quality of the card.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, Imavov has headlined or been the main event for 3 of his last 4 fights. Allen, also 3 of his last 4 fights, has been the main event. So this is one that we said before could very well be a main event for a different fight night card.
Yep. Certainly better than some of the main events we've got so far this year. So
yes, to say the least.
All right. And speaking of the quality of this card, hitting on some final thoughts here. A lot of options here. I think this is a pretty solid card outside of the top 2. Nothing that's gonna like knock your socks off or be draw dropping as far as matchmaking goes. But to me, it's just consistently like solid fight. And to me, when you give me a great main event and a great co-main event, as long as the other ones aren't dog shit, I mean, as long as you just fill it out with solid fights, that's really, I'm not going to ask for much more. So I think overall, when you put it all together, it ends up being a pretty solid fight card here. At least I'll say some of the sketchy ones are on the prelims. Main card, all solid fights that I'm looking forward to. So when we're looking at some final thoughts, Anthony, I think it's your turn to lead us off. What are some things you're looking at?
And then, well, real quick, I just want to say, and I feel bad sometimes. Feels like we're always complaining and stuff like that. But no, it's not that hard. You kind of just rook it down. It's a fight night. At least just give us a good main event and co-main. Like that's what I was gonna say when you were kind of looking through the card. To say, I feel like a couple years ago we used to get this all the time, at least, it wasn't once every blue moon. It used to be just there would have been this specific weekend I'm kind of really looking forward to this main event, and then at least the co-main had some interest or some weight to it, and then after that it could be hit or miss with the rest of the card, or even you just need a couple more solid fights, and then there you go, there's a fight night. UFC, let's do this every weekend. There's not a pay-per-view, please. But the one I don't know. There are some, especially like you said, with this main card. I guess the first one I'll go is just the Brian Battle, former Tough. Has surprised me a little bit. Looked pretty good following Tough, maybe even better than he did a little bit when he was on there at first. But yeah, overall has just been really successful. I think that he ended up winning it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but there was the whole thing with the flip the opponents or something. I can't remember Trayshawn Gore, if he was the one that was supposed to be fighting originally, but yeah, looked good. And then I did want to say Battle had that weird interaction at the end of his last fight where I think the fight got called due to some penalty, and then he was like, "But I was beating your ass anyways," and then tried to start fighting again. So I mean, that's interesting. We'll see. He seems to be becoming a character a little bit, but still has some fun striking and stuff. So um, I just want to see how that plays out. And then the last one I'll choose is just a quick highlight is the Frivola Farazim. I think could be a fun fight to open the card with. Good little pick. Uh, Frivola's had some fun fights, and then I was gonna say I think Ferris is has had some fun fights as well. I looked at his last two fights, and it was Jai Herbert and Claudio Puelles, and the fact that one of those wasn't a finish is a little concerning, but I still think he's a good fighter for where he's at in the I can't even say rankings, but where he's at.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the fight that I was gonna pick as my first one was this Frivola and Fairs ZM fight because it's a fun fight. Matt Frivola, he either gets knocked out or he knocks someone out. It seems pretty straightforward with that, especially his last 5 fights. Got rocked by Benoit Saint-Denis with a head kick in, I think it was Madison Square Garden card last year. Also, the 7-second knockout lost to Terrence McKinney, but in between there, 3 first-round knockouts. So I think he needs to do something to get back to winning ways, and it's going to be hard against a guy like ZM who he just goes for decision, just wears you out. This is one that if the fight doesn't go or doesn't finish in the first round for Frivola, he might be in a bit of trouble because ZM knows how to get to the decision and win on points. The other one I'm kind of intrigued about is the one that opens up the whole fight card. Chris Duncan, Bolagioki. I can't remember when Chris Duncan fought last off the top of my head, but it was he fought on the GB card on the England card. I'm pretty sure.
I know Chris Duncan fought on the Mexico City card and he lost to Manuel Torres. Manuel Torres just kind of, he still had cardio, just started man strengthening him around a little bit, but I don't remember who he had fought previous to that, but Chris Duncan has had some bangers in the past.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He has 9 knockouts. The guy he's fighting, Oki, has 5 knockouts. This is one that I think can get the crowd going early and give them something to cheer about. Belgium and Scotland, 2 countries relatively close, so I wouldn't be surprised if they each have a fair number of fans for this opening fight. So I think we have 2 bangers to open up the preliminary card and the main card. So gotta love that. Get the crowd excited early and often.
Yeah. I am excited for all of the fights that you guys have mentioned pretty much. That speaks to the quality of this card. Couple things I'll add. I really love that Oki and Chris Duncan fight. Chris Duncan has one of the best fights in the history of Dana White Contender Series. His fight there was absolutely insane. Oki is a guy I'm really high on. He was number 3 on my Dana White Contender Series rankings for last season, so high hopes for him in the UFC. Looking forward to seeing him fight a step up in competition. Matt Frivola, Farazim, great fight. And Brian Battle, also, like you said, Anthony, I've been impressed with him in his last couple performances. So those are all fights I'm looking forward to. I'll also throw out there Morgan Charrier versus Gabriel Miranda. Feel like I've touched on, or I feel like I've talked about Morgan Charrier, and every single time we've done a final thoughts on the card he's been on. But he always pops out to me. He's a guy I have high hopes for. The only problem with Morgan Charrier is he cannot win a close fight. I don't know what the judges see in his fighting that they don't like, but the judges, if it's remotely close, they will not score the round for him. In order for Morgan Charrier to win a fight, he just has to go out there and blitz his opponent and absolutely destroy him. And he's got a decent shot to do that this week against Gabriel Miranda. So I think that could be a fun performance. And then William Gomes versus Joe Anderson Brito is one of the most hilarious fights you can make, in my opinion, because they're 2 complete opposites. Joanderson Brito is a crazy person that will do what he can to either knock your head off or choke you out. William Gomis is going to teep and jab and run for 15 minutes and do his best to not fight. So we're going to see whether the guy who likes to fight can make this a fight, or the guy who can run will make this a track meet. So that's going to be an interesting little clash of styles to see which one of those two things wins out there. So that should be a interesting fight from a viewership perspective. Unless William Gomis does his little thing where he makes it a track meet, then you're going to go, all right, this is ridiculous. And Brito's going to get frustrated. He'll start talking trash, and it could get ugly, but we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I liked both those fights as well. The whole main card, I think we've actually now touched on every single fight on that main card, one way or another, and that just shows how deep and how fun this main card is looking to be. So it's going to be a good weekend for sure.
Yep, I agree.
The last thing I want to say one more time, not to beat a dead horse, but like we said, like I was looking at the rest of the year, and the thing is, the reason why it looks so good is not because of the pay-per-view events necessarily, but it's because of the amount of fight nights that I thought looked good. And I guess my issue is, if they can do it at the end of the year, let's look at what we're doing, the recipe we got going on and cooking here, and let's maybe work on doing that. Hey, next year I'll take middle of the year and end of the year. And then eventually in the future, maybe we could do year round and put out a good product here, Dana.
I still think they're kind of recovering from the aftermath of 299 and 300, where every single fight on there could have been in the prelims and early prelims could have been a fight night main or co-main, and they just stacked those so much that we're still kind of suffering a bit at points this summer because there were some fights to forget that we really used Figueiredo and Henry Cejudo type fight as the main event.
I don't disagree necessarily. Because when I'm talking to my friends, I keep hearing that too as a reason. I don't know if the UFC should get like just a free hall pass now, or like for the rest of the year to use that as their excuse. Because the other thing is, those fights, some of those fights were in March too, so it's like, exactly. we got some time. So, but I guess I see what you're saying. Since those fights were in March, they've missed the summer window and they're getting put on finally back on the fall window or the winter window. But I don't know. I can only hear UFC 299 and 300 was so good. That's the reason for this. Yeah. So many times before, I'm like, it's not the only reason though.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely not the only reason. But
I do see what you're saying. I agree.
Yeah,
it's a combination of things in my opinion, and it doesn't help the UFC's case that they punted on 301, so they went stack pay-per-view, and then punt, and then 302. So they took a pay-per-view off, and everyone said, well, 299 and 300, can't be too mad at them. So there's a little bit of a mixed bag there with that one. So all right, we've got some fight news to talk about. Let's start with we're gonna start with 309, I believe this is. Mm-hmm. And we'll start at the top of the card. I think the more interesting discussion is probably the co-main event. But Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic, signed, sealed, delivered, Madison Square Garden, going down in November, UFC 309. Are you guys surprised this fight came together? What are your reactions to Jon versus Stipe being booked and being ready to go? Jerry, we can throw it over to you.
I mean, I guess it was inevitable that they were going to do it or they were both going to retire, it seemed like. I just wish, I don't know, I've said this before, but what does he have to do to get a title shot for Tom Aspinall? What more does he have to do? I know Jon doesn't want to fight him because it doesn't help his legacy at all. Stipe only wants to fight Jon, and I just feel like Tom Aspinall going out also defending his interim title is getting screwed by this whole thing. So I'm very happy it's finally signed. It looks like it's going to happen. I just kind of want to get it out of the way because truthfully, I don't know what Stipe has going at 41 or 42 years old at this point, and hasn't fought in 4 years since he got violently knocked out by Francis Ngannou, who has gone to a different promotion, went to boxing, almost knocked out the top boxer in the world, then got flatlined by Anthony Joshua, who just then went and got flatlined this past weekend as well. All while Stipe's been kind of sitting on the couch and doing whatever he's been doing. So I'm curious to see what shape he's in. The ring rust will be real there. And Jon's not a guy you want to have ring rust with. And hey, he's also coming off an injury. So I have a fear this could be a very, very sloppy one, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think this had to get done because I don't know who else Jon Jones would have ever fought. Like I think this was the one fight he was looking for. And I guess to be fair to Stipe, if he wants one last paycheck too, this is a legacy fight or whatever that makes sense for him as well. But yeah, overall, I don't know. I think I mean we've said it. This isn't the fight people are like dying for. This is the fight we're getting though. Um, and I do think it would be hilarious if Stipe came back and
Oh,
just absolutely slaughtered him after. No, well, not I shouldn't say slaughtered him, but even Stipe comes back and beats him as much as Jon. It seems like he's been ducking other fights and such. But overall, I do think as much as this isn't necessarily the fight I think we all want to see right now, I think both of these guys do deserve it. They've done a lot, so they can get their last big spotlight main event, last big paycheck and everything before they both become Hall of Famers. Um, I was wondering, he looked frozen, so but
hey,
uh,
do you think they both retire after this fight, or do you think, say, Jon wins, is he going to fight again?
yeah, I think Stipe is retired, so
Yeah,
that's it.
that's why I didn't include him in that. I think
Yeah,
if
yeah.
anyone's going to come back, it would be Jon, but it definitely not. I don't think Steve. I think Steve is done.
I don't know. Yeah, I saw. Yeah, I agree. I think Steve is done. It's hard to tell. It's everything we've seen. You wouldn't assume Jon Jones fights again. Everything like when he kind of talks on Twitter and stuff, it sounds like he's this for sure kind of will be his last one. But he's a competitor. He's fragile, a little bit shallow skin. I think if enough people talk and stuff, and or give or take too, maybe let him retire first and get that itch in a couple of years. That's always fair. That's always fair for some people, some fighters. So I would say his is a lot less like 100% sure and certain, but I think there's a good chance he steps away at least. I won't say full retirement, but he steps away after this fight.
Yeah. Well, welcome back, James.
All right. Sorry, fellas. My computer decided it needed to take a crap there for a second. My bad. But the thing that I'll add on this fight is I'm not incredibly stoked to see Jon Jones versus Stipe here. It's just not. It's really just not that good of a fight, in my opinion. It's just a guy who's 43, who is coming off a knockout loss, who I really doubt is going to look that great. Kind of getting this fight based off his name. And listen, I think Stipe is great. I don't want to talk too bad about the guy, but it feels like he just kind of sat out and waited for this opportunity. He could have fought other guys, but he's been sitting waiting. Jon Jones took what I think he believes is an easier fight in Stipe Miocic rather than the young and hungry guy in Tom Aspinall. I think both these guys probably retire. I'd say there's a 100% chance Stipe's done and a 75% chance Jon's done. So not very optimistic about either of these guys sticking around.
Also, I just want to say the last thing too. I think Jon Jones could do is kind of mercy kill him and maybe go for a sub instead of knocking out a 43-year-old that hasn't fought in 5 years. So just keep that in mind, Jon. If you watch this,
God, imagine the scenes if Stipe knocks him
To
out.
be fair, the worst part is I was thinking about it, and I think like a better version of Stipe could actually give him like some problems. Like
Oh yeah.
Jon isn't that good at boxing. Like that's his worst. Like I shouldn't say isn't that good. That is his worst attribute is his boxing, in my opinion. And like Stipe isn't an easy guy to go out there and wrestle. So maybe if he were 35, it'd be a different story. But at 43, it's like this isn't that good of a fight. But I think at a different time, this actually would have been a really interesting stylistic clash. So I will say, Jon hasn't knocked anybody out in ages. Last knockout was Alexander Gustafsson v. Ground and Pound in 2018. So it's not like he's out there knocking people dead. So I think it may be a submission. So, and before that, if you go before Gustafsson, you got to go all the way back to Chael Sonnen in 2013. So, sorry, he's got the DC knockout in there too, somewhere.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean,
not a ton of knockouts for Jon.
This would have been a great fight to have in 2018 or 2020 or something, somewhere around then. But now it's just, I don't know what to expect. God, the scenes of first we had Sean O'Malley, we've had some other of Dana's favorite fighters lose in the biggest moment of Jon Jones, who's been harping as the number one pound for pound fighter in the world, comes out and loses. Dana's going to have a rough look back at the end of the year.
He'd probably cut the broadcast.
Yeah, I think Dana. Sorry, go ahead, Anthony.
No, I was saying if like Jon Jones is like getting wobbled and stuff, he'd probably cut the broadcast. Dana wouldn't let that happen.
It was fake news.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I think Dana has the terms greatest of all time and pound for pound number one fighter in the world confused. Rarely is the greatest fighter of all time not number one pound for pound. It's kind of a weird little thing that could happen. But when he's 37 and fat in the weight class above his natural weight class, it is possible. It is possible. All right. Let's move on here to the co-main event. We've got a rematch between Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler. It's a great fight. It's a great fight, but not one I was expecting to see. It felt like that Conor McGregor return was not that far away, but now we have Michael Chandler taking a different fight, fighting Charles Oliveira. We'll talk about Conor here in a second, but first let's start with this fight. What do you guys make of Chandler moving on from the Conor fight, and what do you make of Charles Oliveira being the guy? I don't know if get the shot's the right word, but he stepped away to fight Charles. What do you make of that being the decision for it to be Charles? Because I imagine he kind of had, I don't know if he had a full pick of the litter, but I imagine, he had some options if he was stepping away from the Conor fight. I don't think it was Charles Oliveira or nothing. I imagine he had some option and some sway in who he could fight. So what do you guys make of him stepping away from the Conor fight for at least the time being? And what do you make of it being Oliveira, the opponent? After my whole computer mishap, I don't remember whose turn it is to go first. But Anthony, we can swing it over to you first.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. At the end of the day, it's a really entertaining fight. They fought once. I think, Chandler dropped him. Crazy, revisionist history if maybe he wins that fight and finishes off the drop and, where he could be at. I mean, he's still always been an entertaining fighter. I still think he's a little bit of a fan favorite, just how he fights and how he interacts and stuff. But, yeah, overall, I think this is a good rematch. I think it's obviously winnable fight for both men here. I do side with Oliveira because he's done more recently, but I think, and to be fair for Chandler too, Oliveira has a lot of fans as well. Like he's one of the bigger people in the UFC, so to not be, to be kind of put on the back burner or on the sideline for 2 years and not even getting that fight, I think this is a good first fight back to to try to get back that attention and make people remember like how entertaining your fights have been in the past. So overall, this is something I'm happy with. It's just obviously not ideal for him that the McGregor fight, I don't want to say didn't work out quite yet because I guess it could still possibly happen. But it's tough, 2 years, but then again, he kind of did that to himself, waiting so long. So,
I'll say about damn time he moved on from Conor. I, as you know, on here I've said it a couple times before. Didn't think that fight was ever going to happen, and I can't believe Chandler wasted 2 of his prime years after having some entertaining fights. Sure, he lost to Poirier and got submitted, but he beat Tony Ferguson with that brutal front kick. He had the brawl with Oliveira, the brawl with Justin Gaethje. Came out on the losing side of both of those, and I just feel like he's wasted so much of his potential and career waiting for Conor McGregor to come around, and it was time for him to move on. I am curious though why he took Oliveira as the opponent. Maybe it's because he felt like he had something and could have, probably, possibly even should have beat him in that first fight. But on the Oliveira side, it's like, hey, you beat this guy once, go and do it again. Let's see what happens. And I'm here for it. I think this is going to be a far more entertaining fight than the main event, as you guys even said earlier. And I think this is a 5-round co-main, isn't it? Or is it? It is 5. Okay, I thought it was 5 rounds. So not that we're going to need 5 rounds, but you never know.
Yeah, you could make this a 2-round fight, and I'm not sure we're going the distance. I think Charles makes sense because when I think about the guys that make sense outside of Conor, 4 names really come to my head, and it's Dan Hooker, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira. You look at his record; he has fought every single one of those guys. So I don't really think a fresh name was a matchup. If it was a fresh name, I think they would have to go towards like a Fiziev. And to me, do you step away from the Conor fight to fight Fiziev? I would say no. You might as well just keep crossing your fingers and hoping. So I think this makes sense. I guess the other name would have been Max Holloway for a fresh face, but Max is pretty occupied for the time being. And then after, whatever happens with Max and Taporia, is he defending 145 if he wins? If he doesn't defend or if he loses, is he doing BMF stuff at 155? Is he trying to fight Conor? Is he, trying to fight another guy at 145? There's just so many questions with Holloway's future. Not bad questions, but he's got so many options that if you kind of get in line to fight Max Holloway, you may not be the next option for Holloway. It's a weird kind of dynamic there. So I think this makes sense. And if he beats Oliveira, like that takes a Conor fight to a whole nother level, in my opinion. Because if he beats Oliveira, it kind of has to be a finish. I mean, like we said, it's not going 5 rounds. So it's got to be an impressive finish. So that Conor fight then goes to another level. And there's no doubt that you get Conor as well if you win. If he loses, I still think he could get Conor. Because like, who's Conor gonna fight? Is he gonna peel off to go fight Gaethje? Gaethje's coming off a loss too. Is he gonna peel off to go fight Dan Hooker? Maybe. Like, but I'm not like convinced of it. It's just like I still think even if he loses, he's gonna be in line to fight Conor. I don't think it's completely like, oh, he lost, now we can't have him fight Conor. Like, if anything, he gets clipped and his chin's worse, and then they'll gladly throw him out there against Conor because now he's older and his chin is even worse. So it may help him get the Conor fight if he goes out there and looks like crap. So who knows? So I don't think it's a terrible fight. I think it'll be a fun fight for the fans. I do think it's interesting timing to step away from the Conor fight because I guess we can swing over to the Conor portion of this, but I kind of think Conor's coming back. I've kind of had that opinion for a minute, and maybe I'm the delusional one, but to me, he just doesn't sign on the dotted line to headline a pay-per-view if he doesn't want to fight. To me, that's just not something that he would do. I just don't see that being the path for Conor. I think he would just retire. We've seen him fake retire in the past. Like, I just don't think that Conor would sign a fight and then not fight. That's just kind of the way that I feel, the way that he's kind of done his whole entire career. So I think Conor's going to fight again. I think he'll fight in 2025. I think he'll fight in early 2025. One interesting note is that the UFC's TV deal window, their renegotiating period starts in 2025. So they may be using Conor as a little bargaining chip on that now that they've gotten closer to that window. So I think that may be part of this whole deal. But I think Conor's fighting personally in early 25. I don't think this is Conor's done. Will it be Chandler? I don't know. It does give Conor the opportunity to switch up and do something else. But as of right now, I'd still lean him fighting in 2025. And if you had to make me set a line, I'd probably make Chandler still be the favorite for the guy who's going to fight. So that's kind of how I feel about the Conor situation. Jerry, it's your turn to lead us off. I don't know if you feel the same. I imagine you feel different, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
A little bit. I mean, I just feel like he doesn't have the same desire to fight as much. I know earlier this month he came out and said he was going to run for president of Ireland. He's doing all his movie stuff. He's doing all this other stuff with bare knuckle, and it doesn't seem like fighting again in the UFC is his top priority. Maybe it is. I'm not in the room with him, so I have no idea what he's actually thinking and all that. But from an outside look, this is kind of what it seems to me. I do think if he does come back, it'll be a February or March kind of timeline. Maybe around St. Patrick's Day, they go and do a pay-per-view in Ireland or something. I'm always an advocate for that, but do something like that, or if he comes back, it will be a spectacle. And I'm sure Chandler's probably going to be the first guy in line, depending on what happens with the Oliveira fight, because there's a chance he goes and knocks out Oliveira. Suddenly he's next in line for a title shot. Does he pass up a title shot to fight Conor McGregor? That's a big question, and I don't know what the answer is to that. Otherwise, the guys I'd look at for McGregor, because he's on the bigger side. Now, I don't know if he will fight at 155 or if he'll go up to 170, but maybe an old man fight between him and Colby Covington, something like that. That would intrigue me. The press conference would be a hell of a time. They don't need anyone else. Just give those two mics and let them just go at it.
I did want to say real quick, I could see it. The Chandler get a win against Oliveira, gets a title shot because he's been, a company man. And if he won, and then the most diabolical work of all time, McGregor instant title shot would be insane.
It's possible.
Yeah, I don't know. They're also doing some construction on the house. I don't know how bad on the neighbor's house. I don't know if you can hear it, but okay, good. I think I don't know. It's just it's odd. I think if McGregor was so close to fighting, why book another fight, or kind of why even tell Chandler, unless of course they don't. Chandler, I guess, isn't the most important part of that equation, and it kind of doesn't matter who McGregor's facing. It's just you got to have McGregor in there. But then also, he's fighting November. If they're booking early 2025, maybe that March would be, because I was thinking worst case scenario, like Chandler gets knocked out, you need that layoff period. So it should be looking more at like March. But if not, it's still that early 2025. I guess I've always said I believe McGregor's fighting again when he's making that walk to the octagon, like when he's finally everything's there. However, I will say I've seen more optimism around him. I was leaning more James is thinking recently too, thinking it was going to happen. But I don't know. We'll see. I will say the funny thing about him now being ready for early 2025 is they have mid and late 2025 to still book one. Dana can still keep pushing it back now that it's once it hits early 2025. So we'll see. Then he has a full year of excuses and stuff to use. But hopefully we do see him at least one more time back in the octagon.
Yeah. Two routes here that I think are possible that I want to throw out there as well. One, if Chandler wins, I don't know that he gets a title fight. I think they would still try and get him to fight Conor, because if Chandler were to beat Oliveira and then Conor would beat Chandler, that is like a clear route to give Conor a title shot. Like, all it does is make his win over Chandler more impressive. So if Chandler beats Oliveira and then Conor beats Chandler, it's like, well, I mean, he's kind of just beat the guy who was in a decent spot to go get a title shot. So it would make him getting a shot less of a con job. if that were the situation. The other thing I'll say is I think Dan Hooker is the next best option if Chandler were to not be the guy to get the fight. I think it'd be Hooker. I think Hooker will do two things: talk on the mic and be an entertaining fight. I think both those things are true for Hooker. So I think that would lead to him being a pretty decent option for the UFC. I guess Gaethje wouldn't be a bad option as well. You try and rush Gaethje back out there. Not saying this is ethical at all, but you try and rush Gaethje back out there a little bit too early after that knockout. Send him out there against Conor. Conor's got a little bit of an easier time cracking that chin. I do think that is an option the UFC may explore as well. Gaethje and Conor also have a decent amount of history and beef between the two as well. So Gaethje's a guy who's always wanted to fight Conor and hasn't got to do it. So I think those would be the two alternative routes if Chandler, for some reason, wasn't the name anymore.
Yeah, I like those names.
Right.
Or do we get another Dustin Poirier fight? Is the only other one?
No, thank you.
Everybody wants that.
No, thank you.
Oh.
All right. Let's touch on this last piece of news here. This is a pretty big one. Fight night main event: Petr Yan versus Deiveson Figueiredo. It is going down November 3rd. Fight night headliner in China. I believe Macau is the city. So this one here, talking about fight nights that are quality. Here's one of them. I don't know what they're going to do with the rest of the card, but this is a great start to a really good card. This is a main event with title implications. Deiveson Figueiredo, I think if he gets another win, gets a title shot, in my opinion. I said he was one fight away last week when we did the recap episode. I think this is the fight to get you a title shot. So Petr Yan is no slouch either. This gives him a chance to get right back in that title conversation. So, Anthony, it's your turn to lead us off here. What do you make of Petr Yan and Deiveson Figueiredo? Signed, sealed, delivered.
Really great fight. Fantastic, fight night and stuff. So, I think, Yan, immeasurable skill and stuff, really good. Merab, because I'm also looking at this, like you're saying, there's already title implications and stuff. So now, like, who has the best chance to maybe beat Merab? And Yan unfortunately ran into the Merab that wanted to shoot 49 takedowns. So I don't even know what to say there. I guess they could fight again. And maybe, if he shoots any less, technically Yan is already going to have a better chance. So that could be something. And then I thought Figgy's looked really good. I think bantamweight suits him well too. And I think he could maybe cause some issues for Merab with the striking, but specifically with his wrestling and submission skills. So I guess Figgy would be more fun just for some fresher blood in this, because we've seen Yan be champ and fight for the belt and stuff or defend it. So overall, I think that is just a really great fight. Though it should be super entertaining, and it's a a good fight. When if either guy wins, I'm excited to see what's happening next. So
yeah, I think this is a perfect fight because I'm assuming just in this bantamweight division, Merab's going to fight Umar Nurmagomedov next. Sounds like the route they're going to go. Now that this fight's booked between Yan and Figgy, it opens up perfectly for Sean O'Malley and Corey Sandhagen. Which of all those fights, this is the one I want to see the most. I think that would be a banger. So this kind of helps us potentially get to that quicker. Because I don't see Henry Cejudo, Chito Vera, Song Yadong really contending with any of those top 5 at the moment or top 6 with a champion. But as far as this fight goes, I'm excited. Should be a good, entertaining one. Figueiredo, like you just said, Anthony, has looked really good since making the move up. Petr Yan, we all know what he can do and how dangerous he can be. So it's going to be a violent one. I have a feeling about that.
Yep, I agree. This is in China, so I wouldn't be surprised if we get another bantamweight bout with Song Yadong.
Yeah.
Like if he's not on this card, I would be absolutely shocked. They tried. This is actually the second time they tried fighting in China. Last year, Song Yidong and Petr Yan were supposed to headline the China card. Petr Yan was forced to pull out, and then they transitioned to Song Yidong versus Chris Gutierrez. Now you have a Chris Gutierrez in the main event. You go, well, we can't. This has to be in the Apex. We can't have Chris Gutierrez headline a card in front of fans. This is crazy. So it kind of messed up plans there. But Song Yidong, interested to see if he gets put on this card. I assume he would. I'd be really, really shocked if he wasn't. That would make for a great co-main event as well. And as long as he's fighting someone ranked, that'd be great stuff. I don't know why we had to book Jose Aldo and Mario Bautista for Salt Lake City. If you knew we were going to China, should have just had Aldo and Song Yidong lined up for the co-main event on that card. Would have been a better fight in front of fans as well. So that would have been my route there. But bantamweight division has a lot of names in it, and Song Yidong has a relatively clean slate of opponents. Helps that his recent loss to Petr Yan is in the main event. So, that's one guy he's not going to fight is not an available option, if that makes sense. So Song Yidong maybe against a Cheeto Vera. Maybe that's a little early for Cheeto, but maybe it's a Cejudo. I was going to say Dom Cruz, but that doesn't really make sense. Who knows when Dom Cruz is going to fight. But point being, there are some options there. Outside of maybe Corey Sandhagen, who he's already fought, or some guys who are ranked below him that he's already fought. There are options for Song Yidong, is my point, and fully expect him to be on that card, whether he's fighting a ranked fighter or a random guy they found on the street just to fill the card.
Yeah. I do like the Henry Cejudo idea. I think that would make for a fun fight, and it has decent implications in the rankings of the bantamweight division as well. But I feel like we have to have Song Yidong. I'm sure if he's fighting, we'll have the Leech. If he's not retired. Oh, is he retired? What happened?
No, but Carlos Prates killed him about 3 weeks ago. Or not 3 weeks ago, but Carlos Prates put him out of commission.
Yes, I do remember that. Yeah, that's a good point. He did get flatlined. So
I would be very concerned if he made the turnaround to fight in November. I would be concerned for his health and safety.
Yeah, so scratch that. Are you surprised going to China? I know they made it a fight night, but I guess they don't have time to put another pay-per-view and have Wei Li do you think we could have the other Yan Xiaonan fighting on this card?
That would make sense. I am kind of surprised they didn't do Wei Li, but they kind of put you in a weird spot. Maybe they're trying to use her for the December card. If you've got Bilal and Shavkat headlining the pay-per-view to end the year, they're probably desperately want another champion on there, whether it's Wei Li or whoever. I did see that Wei Li said she had fight news coming soon, so it's obviously not on this card if this is a 5-round main event. So
yeah, because she hasn't fought since April, so
yeah.
I was also wondering, just since we've been talking about it, maybe they're running this as a test trial for her to headline a pay-per-view in China next year. See how the crowd is and how all that stuff goes in China, and maybe do a pay-per-view there next year.
Yeah, she headlined in China against Jessica Andrade when she won the title. That was a free fight night over there. But obviously a lot has changed since she won that title in whatever year that was, 2018? 2019, early 2019. A lot has changed since then, we'll just say. So maybe they want another test run. Also, they tried to go to China once and it didn't work out. So maybe they're a little skeptical of taking a pay-per-view over there. It's just kind of interesting things going on to make that work. So, but you may be right. All right. Anything else anyone want to get off their chest before we close this episode down?
No, I got nothing really. They just announced that Raymir, the double champion from one, has a fight booked.
Yeah, Reinier de Ritter, they booked him against Gerald Meerschaert, which double champion, another organization going against Gerald Meerschaert. Interesting. UFC Vegas 100. Apparently, they're making all the stops for UFC Vegas 100.
Are they actually?
Yeah, that's the card it's on UFC Vegas 100. But I believe Reiner de Ritter is a BJJ guy, submission specialist. So I believe that is the thought process. Put him against another guy in Joe Miocic who has great BJJ. I think that is the logic in that matchmaking there. So, but who knows? And also, one quick last thing from me. I wonder if this signing of Reiner de Ritter maybe is a kind of evidence that we're going to see more one guys getting signed in the UFC when we've got a card in China. They've signed other guys from the region. They've been poaching over from Ryzen recently. Wonder if they're going to start poaching over from one who seems more interested in BJJ and Muay Thai than MMA. And Demetrius Johnson just retired, so their biggest star in MMA just is no longer on the roster. So interested to see how this whole deal shapes out, but wouldn't be surprised, point being, if this isn't the last guy that we see signed from one championship. So we'll leave on that a little closing nugget of information that maybe more to come. All right. Couple other quick things. If you want more UFC Paris breakdowns, Fight Nights and Best Bets will be out this week, Friday probably. So make sure to check those out. We'll be back next week. Pay-per-view preview, and maybe we'll recap a little bit of this UFC Paris card depending on what time is looking like. So that'll be dependent on how the show goes next week. But for right now, playing on a UFC 307 preview, Alex Pereira versus Khalil Roundtree, Raquel Pennington versus Juliana Pena, everyone's favorite fighter. So that is the current plan. Thank you for watching this episode. Thank you for sticking through with us. Make sure to like, subscribe, and do all that stuff. And make sure to go check out the website, vendetsportsmedia.com. All right. That's everything for today. We will catch you next week.